So I know that we can function at a level of a higher love. Remember that song? We probably hear it in elevators now, but that higher love. And what I know is that in the season of thanksgiving and gratitude, that we can come from that place and feel that higher love of being connected to the spiritual core. So just knowing that we're connected already, and that there's all the neuroscientists, all the quantum physicists are with us here this morning. They're saying, hey, that really is the way that it happens. Also, we have the different world spirituality that is saying the very same thing, that we're connected at the spiritual core. And I had an opportunity to take a look as I went down to the Bosque del Apache to be with this higher love and all the birds flying. And it was amazing as they came in. It was like they were landing at this airport. There was a lot of talking and a lot of gibberish, and it was just amazing their creative emergence, the way that they flew around. And it was incredible, the patterns and that emergence, all those amazing patterns as they flew and they landed and as they took off. And then they automatically just knew. It was like this democratic process that they got the nod from this divine connection at their spiritual core. Hey, we're gonna go this way, or hey, we're gonna go that way. And I could just hear them talking with each other. And sometimes in our life we have that sort of noise that we get to turn back within to our spiritual core and know that we have that divine connection, the higher love, and to remember that and to have a remembrance of that in our daily lives. And so I got to remember, am I coming from a place of completion, knowing that there is that divine completion, the wholeness, the wellness of which we're all made? Am I coming from a sense of completion and oneness? Am I coming from that sense, that knowingness, that livingness, that thanks living, that there's completion? Or am I living out of a sense of compulsion? Is there completion in my life showing up in my conversations? And it could be that there's some people in this room who have a diagnosis. It could be that there's people who may be going through a divorce or foreclosure or other challenges. They may be helping a neighbor, and sometimes we may not always be totally happy during the holidays, but I know that we have those seasons of our life wherein we can come more from a sense of completion rather than being compelled by something outside of us. And on the way home from the Bosque del Apache, which was just a real peaceful place to be still, it was like I was at the center of this amazing place, and there were people all around that were just in awe. It was awe-inspiring. I got to bring that to the cafe that I stopped at on the way home, which was much of a reflection of what we've been seeing on the news in our world. I was sitting next to this couple, and the proprietor came out, and he was reprimanding his waitress. And this couple had ordered extra Alfredo sauce. That's a joyful thing. You've been to see the birds, and now let's have some extra Alfredo. Why not? So he's saying, you got to add $1, and he had like this whole thing about, it pays our bills, it keeps the lights on, all this, it pays your salary, and this and that, in front of all these customers in this cafe. And so the two customers and I looked at him, and we said, boy, we don't appreciate your reprimanding your employees in public. It makes for not so appetizing, it's not so savory of an atmosphere. And he proceeded to do what we've been seeing on the news as far as having, instead of an act of kindness or a sense of completion and compassion or a way to come from a higher love place, he proceeded to act in a violent way. So, needless to say, we didn't stay for the food. We proceeded to leave, and somebody was videotaping as we were, as we're backing up and leaving the establishment. And there were 3 law enforcement officers that pulled up. So I felt like, boy, I can bring that higher love that I had just experienced at the birds to this situation. And he followed out and gave his story, and I was there. What's interesting is the other couple, he was an attorney, and the other gal had worked for an attorney in a federal government, and all, very credible people that were noticing that to reprimand in private, but you want to praise in public. And so what we want to be about is coming from that sense of divine connection and completion and wholeness and wellness. We all sat right next to each other and we said, well, there's something really not well about this, and how can we be of service to draw that to this person's attention? And come to find out it was his stepdaughter, and so there was probably some other stuff going on. And so I felt like we made a difference as far as being open to something that was new and possible that may not have been possible before. And so it was a place where we knew perhaps what was going on inside of this person was something that compelled him to act in that way. And he actually grabbed somebody's cell phone, too, that was videotaping. And it had like hamburger. He was back in the kitchen and it had like hamburger all over it. But it was very messy. And so it was very messy. And we left and we were escorted and whatnot. But the reason I'm talking about this is sometimes we may be in a situation where we feel like we're a midwife, or hopefully we're not the one giving birth, but it felt like it was real messy, like giving birth to this new opportunity for this restaurant, which was in complete contrast to the peace that we had just experienced on the bosque, in our divine nature. And so there was some compulsion that was happening. And so what I know is that Spirit is always there in the midst. So in that moment when there was the unsavory thing that was happening, I knew that Spirit was in the midst. It was in the midst of the waitress. It was in the midst of all the other waiters who were preparing. They were preparing to leave too. Yeah, it was like one of these things you'd see on the news. So what I know is that Spirit was at the midst of that situation, no matter what those appearances were, and that we did the best that we could at that moment. And I'm sure he was doing the best that he could at that moment, but perhaps he was being compelled rather than acting from a sense of being complete and whole and well, because it just was not a well thing. And perhaps it's a call for love. So what I know in my life is that I act either out of fear. I look at whatever is arising for myself. I act out of fear of losing something or someone, or whatever he thought. Maybe he was thinking he was losing $1 for extra Alfredo sauce. You know, how ridiculous. But and I can't imagine it's the first time that they had acted that way. But so what I know is that there's people in this room who may be going through challenges like that. And for us to be inspired, to have a new awareness about our life, and to practice our faith. So we got to practice our faith in that moment. And I was also drawing upon all that beauty that I had experienced in that higher love that I had experienced in the morning. And what I did was, much like in our affirmative prayer, I made a declaration. So I'm sitting there at the table, and I made a declaration, which is the realization step of our prayer. We're having a real insight to what's newness in our life and an opportunity to have real eyes and to realize something new and have a new actualization, no matter what the challenge. So a declaration is often called a realization. And what we do is we declare something into being rather than, begging God to step in. I wasn't sitting there at the table begging and beseeching for something outside of myself to step in. But what I knew was that, much like a GPS, when I program it to be going to Bosque del Apache, I don't say, well, should I really go to Truth or Consequences? Or I'm not worthy to go to Santa Fe. No, I just declare, I make a declaration that that's where I want to go. And the GPS knows the best route. And what we did was, there's a distinction between programming that GPS, and sometimes we program it with faulty information. So this person maybe thought that best way to handle his employees was in that mode. But it scared, pretty much all the customers had left. And the GPS, when we make a declaration, we say, oh, GPS, I'm not worthy, and will you get me? It's not a question. Will you get me to Bosque del Apache? No, I just trusted it. I trusted it, and I allowed it to get me the best and most efficient route to the Bosque del Apache. And so with prayer, what we do is we make a declaration, and then life gives us the best route. Now, for this restaurant, our best route was out the door. Forget the Alfredo. So the problem was not in the thing itself. The problem was not that, but the problem was with the programming, as far as there was maybe some faulty information that was in operation. And so I don't say, well, maybe I want to go to the Bosque del Apache, maybe I want to go to Truth or Consequences to the hot spring. But what happens is, in our prayer, we have integrity. And you'll hear more about this in just a few minutes, but with prayer, there's integrity, which I mean that I make a declaration, and then I may have to change some of my behavior. So I may have to alter my route. I may get to listen. I may know that there's what I can achieve in those results, and I have that knowingness and that trust that there is the divine connection and that higher love at our core. And there was such a beauty in being still at the Bosque del Apache. And what I knew is that when I face that fear, it was kind of fearful. The couple was actually between me and this other gentleman, so I was kind of like, standing up and headed out. But when we face our fear, what we do is we evoke the love that replaces it. And so that can apply to this cafe in Socorro. It can also apply to our world circumstances that we're seeing. It can also apply to our family life as we have a meal on Thursday and give thanks and gratitude and have a deeper sense of joy that as we face whatever's fearful, it may not be that we always like Uncle Joe and his behavior at the Thanksgiving table, right? Everyone has some sort of an Uncle Joe. And so when I face Uncle Joe, when I face that fear, I can evoke the love inside myself, that higher love that replaces that. So when we learn and grow, things come sometimes that are unlike love and gratitude. When we go for love and act out of love, sometimes things come up unlike it. Anyone ever had that experience as we moved in the direction of our dreams, of our love, sometimes things come up unlike it. So, for instance, this gentleman thought that he could, beat someone down and say, get that extra $1 out of him. But when you beat someone down, that's the direction they go down. But when you love someone up and are grateful for someone, then they thrive. So what we want to do is, no matter what, is love people and be grateful so that I thrive, that they thrive. And so we can ask ourselves, how are we doing? How are we doing? How am I feeling? How are you feeling? I want to feel this love. I want to have it be here right now, right here in this moment. I want to feel the love. And together we know that we can grow this love. We know that we can admire that beauty of being still on the water with these birds. And Dr. Ernest Holmes says, from a sense of completion rather than compulsion, he says and encourages us about faith to fill our own consciousness with the truth about spirit. Its completion, its satisfaction, its wholeness. To partake of the nature of spirit. To fill our own minds with the truth about the real self. And sometimes we forget about what's real and true for us. We know that there's a self that's never depressed, never discouraged. We know that we can be optimistic, even with Uncle Joe at the Thanksgiving meal. And so we can know the self, and that it's forever conscious of its unity with Spirit, forever conscious in the oneness of Spirit. And how does it work? How do we know that it is this consciousness that we're in, that's the, as Dr. Amit Goswami would say, it's the ground of all being. It's the being essence of who we are, the core connection, that divine connection. Do you remember that movie, What the Bleep? Yeah? that was something that talked about how we're made up of electrons. We're really not form or really not matter, but we have these electrons that are always moving, and there's the physical universe, and we have our humanness, which is what I experienced at the cafe, that human life. And it's what the neuroscientists and the quantum physicists are always saying too, which mirrors and echoes world spirituality, is that the universe is best seen when it's constructed out of thoughts rather than from matter. So what we do is we go to spirit, we go to that level of creative thought, we go to spirit, we go to that divine deep connection, our core, and there's really some space in there that's not empty. There's a presence. There's a power that we are. And so maybe this matter is really not solid, but there's the electrons that pop in and out of expression, and that they're unknown sometimes, and then they are visible and invisible, and we can create with this creative thought in our feelings. And how am I feeling? Am I feeling from a place of creativity, of completion, or am I feeling compulsed by something else? And there's beliefs about the one who is, and that there's a direct cause. There's a direct cause from our thoughts that has a difference in our reality. And so I'm sure that this gentleman had peptides going on. And remember the people at the What the Bleep movie, they were dancing, and they were having those peptides, which are manufactured in the brain. They're chemicals in the brain. And they were seeking that completion out of a sense of compulsion, because there was a bodily reaction to that emotion. And as I was in this cafe, I had a bodily reaction to that emotion, that there was sort of like this domino effect. And so what we can do is rise above that with the knowingness that, yes, we can co-create our own reality from that sense of higher love and that peacefulness, and bringing in essence, that energy of those birds I experienced in the morning and the peacefulness of the lake. I was able to nurture that moment, nurture and feel nourished in that moment, and not, choose not to have that particular food served up by that guy. So I know that relationships have different seasons, and so it's been a little cold in the morning, and so sometimes when we have a relationship, although be it the one that was short in this cafe, I'll probably never go back, and so that's a choice. But when we have ongoing relationships and it's cold, we might have a cold season in a relationship. We might look forward to spring when there's a more warm, flowering place in our relationship. We may want to bring in some of our relationships out of the cold. And so if we experience something that's cold in a relationship, we may want to warm it up. And so, for instance, we've got soup for lunch, and we're going to warm our hearts with chicken soup for the soul. And knowing that we can love and be grateful for each other as we break bread for each other. And what I know is that as we believe, there's ultimately the presence and that power that shows up in our lives in either a cold way or a warm way, or either in a way of feeling compelled by something or someone, or we can have that inner sense of knowing and direction that we have. And it's also mirrored in mysticism. And so Ken Wilber has an integral theory. He's an integral theorist. Wouldn't you love to wake up one day and say, wow, I'm an integral theorist? And what he does is there's some scientific basis for wholeness and the way that things work in systems. So at this cafe, there was a whole system of waiters and chefs and law enforcement. And oh, what an experience. So ultimately, I got to remember that there was that opportunity to move forward in faith. And so mysticism gives us a little bit of that faithfulness and that experience, that practical mysticism that we can bring and spill forth and pour forth into our daily lives. And it's very practical, that sense of a higher love and oneness that we're experiencing right here and right now, and that will carry forward into our soup. And so what Ken Wilber says, he talks about evolution, and he talks about we're in a vast morphogenic, don't you love that word? we're in a vast field. We're in a vast morphogenic field, which is much like when those birds were circling and landing, and we can compare those to different thoughts. And then here's this one thought that drops down and becomes our experience because we've noticed it. We have those patterns that show up in our life. So I was noticing in the morning that the birds were in flight, and there was something that was creatively emerging in my heart. And so what this integral theory says is that we're all an integral part of the whole. And so that as we begin to notice that, yes, the possibility is for higher love and compassion in the situation, or a call to 911, we know that there's that sense of possibility. There's possibility. There's something that's higher and more that's possible here. So he calls it the great nest. And so it reminds me of the birds because there's that great nest and there's that vast morphogenic field of potentials. So there's all these ideas that are potential in our life. Yes, we can go bankrupt. Yes, I can eat unhealthily. Yes, I can show up in an argument. Yes, I can have all these possibilities. Or yes, I can show up as a beneficial presence. Or yes, I can show up in a different way, in a warm way or a cold way. And in one of our recent books of the month called The Laws of Manifestation in Chapter 2, and it's a little skinny book. If you haven't seen it, it's really great. It's by David Spangler, and he was instrumental at Findhorn about looking at how people function and how people live in systems and how we can manifest things in our daily lives. And it, too, puts together the mysticism and then the current laws of how things manifest in either quantum physics or neuroscience. What he says is, let's take to heart for a moment that manifestation really does work through laws in the universe. So it's not that, electricity, and I'm not much of a cook or a domestic goddess, but electricity, I can either burn the toast or I can make a really, really good pizza. But it's the same electricity, right? It's just a matter of how I use it. So we can manifest in whatever situation. In this view, when we visualize something and we think positively about getting it, bingo. Bingo, we have it available. And it's almost like UPS and having a package come. With the holidays coming up too, have you heard that UPS and Federal Express are merging? They're going to be called Fed Up. Just kidding. Just kidding. But what Spangler goes on to say is that it's like ordering from UPS, that there's laws in the universe. And according to whatever my emotional states are, my emotional and mental states, they're influenced, sure, by our environment. Yeah, leave the cafe. Yes, go back and see the birds. Yes, they're influenced by our environment, but they can just as well, we can just as well experience inner peace, or we can divorce that from what is happening around us. We can divorce that aspect and say, no, I'm going to choose a higher love in this situation. I can choose to go back to my spiritual core. And so aside from whatever subjective states, everything else might look like it comes to us with the help of others, like UPS, that things come to us. We order it, we go to Amazon through our website, and we benefit from that. And then we order something like a gift or a package, and we just automatically know that we'll be receiving it. And so manifestation has to do with patterns and relationships. Well, yeah, I chose to leave the cafe with a couple. I'm out of here. I'm not going to hang around in the kitchen with those guys. So there's those patterns in relationships. And what comes with relationships also comes other things. And so David Spangler talks about someone who wanted to manifest transportation. And so he looked at, do I really want to have a car? And what goes with having a car is I need to support the dinosaurs, the petroleum industry. I need to support the building of the roads. I need to support the insurance companies. I need to support my wife at having another set of keys, and I need to lube and tune it, and all this type of things that comes with owning just a car. And so when we look at what comes with relationships, there's other things that may be involved. Like this gentleman had, it really was his stepdaughter, and there might have been other things going on in the background, some other pattern in that relationship. So there's tire companies to support. I also need a home to park my car, right? I need a place to park it. When I want to manifest a car, I also need to manifest these other things. And so I know that that has to become a part of my life too. And so I may become part of a whole transportation system just when I have a car. And so same thing with a friend or significant other. There's maintenance involved a little bit, there's support, there's a lot of love, there's a lot of higher love, but there's other things that come with relationship, like chicken soup. And on my way home today, I'm going to bring some chicken soup to another friend because I had an abundance. So I don't just manifest a person. So say we want to be in a relationship. I don't just manifest a person, but I manifest a whole complex system of relationships that now then become a part of my life. So there's some benefits to that. And so when David Spangler asked about, do you really want a car? Because he wasn't manifesting it. Do you really want it? And there's things in our life like that. Do you really want it? Sometimes I think, if I really wanted it, boy, I'd have it, right? If I really wanted it. And he suddenly said, no, I don't want a car. I want a bicycle. Because a bicycle doesn't have all those other things that come with it. I want to simplify my life, and I can get to work, and I can live an environmentally conscious life. And he had all these various reasons, and it would give him exercise. I mean, there were all those benefits to having a bicycle. So he became clear. He made a declaration. As soon as he became clear, there was someone else who had a bike within about 24 hours. He says, I'm moving. Would you like to have my bike? He had made this declaration. He became clear. And do you ever notice that when we become clear and make a declaration, we declare because we know it's already complete. We're not compelled to go out and buy the car and go test driving, all these other things. He became clear because he was complete in knowing he had clarity. He made a declaration. So sometimes with relationships, comes other things. And so he decided to have a bicycle. And so he had that relationship. He was engaged in having that bicycle. He enjoyed it. He shared it. He joined some bicycle groups, had a great time. And it also involved more socialization and fun. He had a good time. There's one more example I want to share with you is Ken and Kamatara's daughters dance with flamenco. And around this time, they dance flamenco. They stand on one leg. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. just checking. Just checking. But this group, it's a wonderful group. They perform about this time of year. They've been dancing all year long, flamenco. And what they do is this group made a declaration that everyone gets to dance. Not just one person. They're not just going to cater to one child. But there's hundreds of kids on this stage that everyone gets to dance. And so they made that declaration, and then what they get to do is to alter and adjust their business that goes with that. So they have teachers. They alter the way that they do business and have that change take place. They made a declaration, and then they had to alter and see that they had the capacity for all these dancers and all the teachers, and then to have a place where they could perform at the Kivo Theater, and it's wonderful. 3 hours of flamenco. It's something else. It'll keep you awake. And what that does, so back to integrity. So what this flamenco music company, what this group does, is they made a declaration and then they changed the way they did business to accommodate the kids so that everyone could dance. And that's integrity. So sometimes I get to change my behavior so that I have integrity and show up in an integral way, in an integral part of the whole, and I get to draw upon that piece of completion and wholeness and bring that forward in a higher way in my life. And so that's the way that my life works, is I get to be a woman of my word, I get to have integrity, we get to go through things with grace and dance. And so it happens in my walks too. I make a declaration and I can go for a walk. And what that involves is tying my shoes and getting all my mittens on, now my earmuffs, And if I don't go, I'm a little out of integrity. So I make that declaration, and then I make promises to myself, and then I get to keep those promises. And if I don't keep my promise to go for 3 or 4 mile walks a week, I just get to renegotiate and to make another promise, to make a declaration and follow through with that sense of integrity. Much like that flamenco school. Or we made a declaration to exit that cafe because we had our integrity. So when we face our fear, as we're sitting at this cafe, when we face our fear, we evoke the love that replaces it. We make a declaration in our life, and we know that we have those expressions that take place. And what I want to do is just remind us that we've got prayer and care Sundays. We have a free complimentary session as a gift to you. It's the right color, it's the right shape, it's the right size. Our practitioners are giving affirmative prayer, creative visualization for a free session through November. So pick this up in your bulletin if you haven't already taken advantage of that. It's a gift for yourself. So as we live more from completion rather than compulsion, as we live in more love, live in love, and live in faith, what we get to do is have that knowingness of a higher love, and we're fortunate enough. We know that we're absolutely fortunate enough that we're being opened up to what wants to be revealed now. And so there's situations that happen in our life that open us up to live more in the now, to live more from a place of higher love, to remember that every problem comes bearing its own solution. Yeah, it was a problem. And I'm not going to allow it to overshadow the experience that was peaceful and being still at the lake. So sometimes what I'm noticing on the media is that there's a global cry fest that's happening. There's that sense of hurting and pain and lack. And it's up to us to open up now in this moment and to know that we're fortunate to follow this higher love and this deeper interconnection that we can then share with others. That we can know that we have the wherewithal, that we come from a sense of completion and wholeness, and that we're peacefully connected at the spiritual core. Please join me in this experience right now. And in this remembrance, in this moment, what we do is we allow for the transformation to take place. In this remembrance of this moment, we get to face whatever that fear is and to live from a higher love. We know that we can love ourselves, we can love our world, and to be the change that we wish to see. So please join me in this moment of inner celebration, wherein there is the infinite presence and pure possibility and potentiality of this unified field of total and complete love. There is wholeness, there is wellness, there is that which is evergreen in our heart, there is that which is fluid in this infinite field. And out of this fluidity and this moving stream, this taking flight of our dream, there is that which is soaring as our hearts in completion and wholeness and wellness, in vibrant well-being. It is the divine source, it is the energy, it is the peace. And out of this peace and tranquility, there is the connection of which I am one. And in this oneness, in this loving oneness, there is that which is the harmonizing good. It shows up as radiant health in my life. It shows up as vibrant energy, backed by the divine source, being connected with the supply and on fire with pure possibility and potentiality. It is that which is the warmth of the heart, and knowing that there is the kindling, which always is beautiful and bright and shining in, through, as, and all around us. I'm grateful for this affluent energy, knowing that it is flowing, and in the flow at all times, there is that fluidity of completion and living in the love. So it is this height of heights, this place, and knowing that there is this divine resolve to be there and stay there and to soar. And so I'm grateful in this season of thanks living, and knowing that there is the beautiful season of this warmth. And I release this word, knowing it is powerful and present right here and right now. And so be it, and so it is.